Wilderness Torah and the Center for Earth-Based Judaism. Maybe we can already go to the next slide. So this is our mission. Wilderness Torah awakens and celebrates the earth-based traditions of Judaism to nourish the connections between self, community, earth, and spirit. And we do it in different ways. We mostly have our youth programs and our community programs. Maybe we can go to the next slide, see what waits for us there. So yeah, youth programs. So youth programs includes mainly 3 programs. We have Bechutz, which is K through 5th grade. It's like a Sunday, it's like we sometimes call it Sunday school in the woods. And it's happens on average twice a month. And we'll obviously get a lot more into the details of that. And then our next program is called Benature, which is for middle school. And it's a 2-year program, a rite-of-passage program. And that starts immediately after Bechutz ends. So for graduates of Bechutz, they can transition to that and continue their journey of deepening into craft and scale and community and earth connectedness. And after that, we have our Neshama quests, which are our week-long backpacking trips in the mountains for the teens, that kind of continue that all the way to adulthood. So that's our youth programs. And then in the next slide, I'll invite Sarah Lees, who's a community program manager, to speak about our community programs.
Yes, thank you, Itamar. So we have intergenerational community festivals and other programming where, excuse me, I'm gonna move my cat, where we create a village and have opportunities for families to come and with their kids, as well as elders and young adults, and really support the whole community connecting and growing together outside of our youth programming, but weaving it together.
Thank you. And so some things about our youth programs in general, like all of them, they're based on a mentorship model. So we don't consider ourselves teachers. We don't even consider ourselves instructors. We consider ourselves mentors, which means that through tracking the youth and seeing what their interest, where their interest lies, where their curiosity lies, and where their growth is, we question, we provide opportunities, we provide experiences, and support them in their learning and growth. We don't, as such, have like learning aims. There's no content knowledge that we're trying to pass. It's more a way of being, an attitude, and mostly around connection to themselves, connection to nature, and connection to the traditions. And so that's what mentorship means to us. And then we're an outdoor and experiential Jewish learning. And first of all, our programs are 100% outdoors. It's very rare that we would seek shelter if it's really raining hard, but otherwise we're like all the time outside. And everything we do is, as much as we can, is experiential. We play games. We obviously are outside and we get our hands on, crafts and materials, and we ask questions and we track and notice the seasons and make connections between that and what's happening in the Jewish calendar. And that's how we learn. And finally, we are also about community. And so part of the experience of being in the youth programs is actually engaging the parents and the families, whether through parent programs or just the ability to create spontaneous community through events that some of the parents organize. So with eventually the idea of all that being part of a big village. And then this picture is probably familiar, if not from your own children, then from just like being connected to what's happening in the world right now, especially with COVID entering the scene almost 2 years ago. Just like a lot of Zoom, as we are on right now, a lot of self-directed time, a lot of isolation, a lot of indoors. And even before this, there was this this book that came out and highlighted something called the nature deficit disorder. Already we were recognizing that there was things in our youth that were suffering from lack of connection and lack of being outdoors. And then with the pandemic, that really became acute. And so our programs were set to address that even before and even more so now in the atmosphere of the last 2 years. Let's see what the next slide is. Some pictures. So just like some of the activities that we do crafts, and I think what you see on the right side is watercolors that track like the moon phases. Over on the top, we see making quick bows. On the left, going on a little walk and exploring different terrain. And in the bottom middle, this looks like a hitbo to do it, like a solo practice in a beautiful little sacred spot that child had constructed for themselves. We can go to the next one. Just saying a few words about earth-based Judaism. There's a lot to say, and I'm not, the world expert on that. But some people think of it as some innovative, like new idea. And just to highlight that Judaism was always rooted in earth. And over on the right, we have, I think, a depiction of the burning bush, which is like obviously an encounter with intense manifestation in nature and everything of that set forth. In the middle, we've got Miriam Neviah and her connection through music with water and bringing forth water. And on the left, we have the tree of life, which is like a central mystical motif in Kabbalah. So one of the central organizing principles is a tree. And these are just a few very small examples of how nature connectedness are very much part of what Judaism was always about, and maybe was forgotten a little bit during a certain time. Another beautiful picture, child exploring the madrone trees. We do tree climbing in a safe way. I guess this picture also passes both the joy, but also like the freedom in exploration. Another picture here. No words are needed. This picture, it's not a Bachutz picture, it's a B'nature picture, but we left it here just to show how that journey continues through the years. So here in this picture, this is a youth about to embark on their kind of initiation ceremony. It's a solo fire sit. So after spending 2 years honing their fire building skills, they go out and spend a night on their own tending a fire, sacred fire, with their initiation questions in mind. And now we're going to switch to speak specifically about Bachutz.
Thank you, Itamar. And if folks have questions, they can pop them in the chat and we'll either get to them as we go or at the end. So Bachutz, which we talked a bit about, is our K-5 program. And we call it Sunday School in the Woods because it is a Jewish connection program and it's outside. But we don't just take the traditional Hebrew school curriculum and then move outside. It's really, like Itamar was saying, an experiential and connective experience. And we have different groups of Bachutz pods across the Bay Area. We have a pod in Marin, a few in San Francisco, and a bunch in the East Bay. And the times kind of vary based on age a bit. And the dates, we can send you that after. They're on the website. There are 7 sessions actually for this spring. And that also can vary sometimes from year to year. And so we have groups of, around 8 to 12 participants, 1 adult mentor who, we train and support throughout the process, and then 1 to 2 teen mentors. And that's the leadership group for each pod. And the group really can get very close over the course of the season, and it's really sweet to watch. And that's really one of the best parts of Bahoots. Sometimes families will sign up with friends. Sometimes families will come in really looking for community and find people to connect with. And here you see like a lot of different things that we do in Bahoots. Some of them are similar to what the pictures we saw earlier are. There are lots of crafts. We also spend a lot of time, telling stories and songs and engaging in gratitude practice. Those are a lot of the ways we weave in the Jewish, and we'll go more into our curriculum in a bit. But our programs are all outside, like Itamar was saying, and that looks like very different depending on the scenario. So when we do things with the whole group, there are partner activities, there are challenges that each participant does alone or with a partner, that kind of thing. One really important aspect of all our youth programs is parent involvement. We want to get the families as involved as possible. We know this is a program that parents are sending their young people to, and parents also want to be connected and involved with Wilderness Torah. Sometimes we have parents come in from having been to a Wilderness Torah event, and sometimes we have parents come into Bahoots and then want to be, further engaged with the Wilderness Torah community. So we have parent programs about once or twice a season. We're definitely, always going back between virtual and in person on the parent programs right now. And it's a consistent evolution there. And we have, a parallel parent track in B'Nature as well. And there are parent programs for Neshama Quest. So that's something that we really take through from kindergarten through 12th grade in our youth programs. So just to get a little specific about what actually is Bahoots, what do we actually do there? Like, how are we weaving in all this nature stuff and all this Judaism? This is our 6-sided star, Jewish star. And you can see that the blue triangle basically is Jewish values, Hebrew calendar, and Jewish practice. And those are the 3 core ways that we weave in Judaism. And then the green triangle is nature crafts, challenges, and nature connection routines. And those are the 3 core ways that we weave in the nature connection. And these things aren't, they aren't separate. It's not like you have Jewish values part of the day, right? We're taking them out to be able to share what we do, and they're all woven together in the program. So we're going to take you through each one of them specifically right now to give you a sense of what that looks like. And Sarah Elise, I will pass it to you.
Thank you, Sylvie. So this first piece that is essential to everything we do in Bahoots is this nature connection. So we want Bahoots, whether the etzim or the trees, the older group, or the shorashim, the roots, the younger group, we want them to come away from each day feeling like they got a little bit closer to the natural world, whether it is digging in the dirt, putting their face against a tree, wearing blindfolds so that they are more sensorily aware of the birdsong around them. A primary goal of being out in the woods is to make those nature connections. Sylvie, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thanks. So when we make those connections, we do that, in that way. And nature crafts and skill development are really core ways that we use hands to create that connection with nature. So you can see a fire on the left, and that's actually a really key part of our nature connection practice. So we use fire in Bahoots, in B'Nature, and in Neshama Quest, and it's age appropriate and is challenging at the right level. And we also often use knives and teach how to whittle. And there are lots of other crafts. Gourd bowls are a common one, candle making. And the idea with crafts is that we want people to come away, learning a new skill, right? Something they can take home and do by themselves or with a friend or with a parent. And also that they're doing something complete and something pretty simple. Actually, it doesn't need to be very complicated. But the idea is that they're learning this skill and it's connected to all the other things we're doing in Bahoots. and something they can take with them. And Itamar, you're up with challenges.
Thank you. So one other aspect of it is personal challenges. And I would say there's probably many reasons why we employ challenges in our programs. I would maybe mention two. One is just imagining on one hand, like a child sitting in a classroom, like just listening hours on end to somebody speaking at them, trying to impart information, and kind of imagining like what their system is experiencing and their level of engagement, and then contrasting that with potentially like being led through the forest with an eye covering to try and find the tree that they're later going to try and find without the eye covering, and try and imagine what that does to their system. And so one of the reasons we use challenges is because it awakens us and engages us and connects us. The other reason why we use challenges is because appropriate challenges that grow gradually harder are one of the best ways to create success experiences and mastery experiences. And that's been proven to be one of the best ways to increase self-efficacy, so that a person's belief in what they're capable. And so that's like the other reason. And some examples are like, one of them, like I said, are like different activities that involve different senses. So, and using eye coverings is common because it enhances a lot of other senses. But also hitbodedut, which is a Hebrew word that comes from early Chassidut, to like make oneself alone and enter into like a personal dialogue with nature. And so we practice that as a core routine. And so it might start by a few minutes and then like increase as is appropriate. And then of course, different games that involve either hiding or seeking and in nature, or climbing and engaging with different trees, and fire. So those are some of the challenges that we use. And then I'll speak also about, now we're moving into the Jewish part of that curriculum, Magen David, that we saw earlier. And one of the things is Jewish values. So the way that we weave Jewish values is we focus on basically like three main categories. The one is it's called Ben Adam Lechavero, so between a person and their friend or the other. And so we focus stories around that, songs around that, games around that. There's Ben Adam Le'atzmo, between a person and themselves. And then again, we use different stories as we see the groups, what the need of the group is and where they're at. We have different stories that we bring in from the Jewish tradition in those. And then the last one is Ben Adam LaMakom, so between a person and the place. And so these are like well-established Jewish, in a way, a curriculum bank of Jewish teaching that we use and frame in our Jewish values curriculum.
We also have a core of Jewish practice. So, for example, in the mornings as we arrive, you might play some music and say a gratitude prayer. Traditionally, Moda Ani or Moda Ani would be a gratitude prayer, and we may say things in Hebrew, or we might say it in English, or we might just kind of hold it internally. We say a blessing before we eat as a group together. That might be the hamotzi, or it might be a prayer that we create together. But we rely on these pieces of Jewish practice to hold our day together. And this doesn't mean that, this is not like a traditional Hebrew school. We don't have, we're not teaching the alphabets, we're not teaching folks how to read Hebrew, but we are using Hebrew throughout the day and familiarizing ourselves with the sounds of it, but it's not like Hebrew school in that fashion.
Thanks, Itamar and Sarah Lise. So really at the core, I would say, of our Jewish and nature connection practices, we come to the Hebrew calendar. And we really aim to connect the Hebrew calendar with the seasons and the changing seasons on the land in the Bay Area. And it maps really well onto that because we live in a Mediterranean climate. So let's see, right now we're just at the end of Kislev and Hanukkah, right up here. And we could go into this for hours and hours, and there are moon cycles and a lot there. But we're in, between winter and autumn and getting into close to Tu B'Shvat and Purim. And we make these connections between the holidays and what's happening with the seasons pretty explicitly with Behutz participants, but also implicitly in the activities that we choose and in the games that we play. And the idea here is really that embodying the Hebrew calendar and living it, year after year and getting into the rhythms of that create a really deep connection to Judaism. And that's something that's, relevant and easy to grasp because they see it. They're seeing what's changing on the land. They're seeing that it gets dark at 4:30, So that's how we're building a lot of the connections between the earth focus and the Judaism focus. And another key part of our program that we were introducing before is, a little outside the curriculum, but essential nonetheless, is the mentorship model. And as we were saying, folks aren't called educators, they're called mentors. And I'll ask Sarah Lise to step in and say a little bit about their experience as a Behutz mentor.
Thank you, Sylvie. One of the things that I've been really excited about as a Behutz mentor and continuing my involvement with the youth programs has been this idea that we are building in habits of practice and experience within the Behutz and B'Nature model. So the Behutz attendees who have come multiple times will kind of like show the ropes to the newer attendees, and folks who have been through the Behutz program and or the B'Nature program. We have our teen mentors who come back and are interacting and leading activities with the kids and are learning themselves from my role as the adult mentor. I'm working with the teens to create the curriculum, and we're working together. And it is myself in turn, I feel mentored by the Eitzim or the Shoshim, the kids who are in my group, because I'm always like looking at things with new eyes from their perspective, and we're working together. It's a lot less of a kind of banking model of education where we're depositing bits of information. It's much more collaborative as a mentorship model, and it's acknowledging expertise and also acknowledging a commitment to growing together. It's a piece that infuses every aspect of the way we interact with the world around us and the kids. One of the ways this kind of comes through is in our schedule. This is a sample daily schedule. The days we don't meet that often, and so establishing these core routines from day one is really important. And so we have our particular flows. We have what's called HASA, highly organized, seemingly spontaneous activities. So you drop kids off and it seems like, oh, these things are coming out of nowhere, but we have organized them, we have planned them. So there's games happening or little craft pieces, usually led by the teen mentors. People are playing together, and then we establish the opening for the day. It might be a song, it might be a story, it might be a particular natural materials gathering practice that depends on the mentor, depends on the group. We get these routines established. And then there'll be a nature connection time. So we'll go on a hike, or we will construct a sukkah, or we will do leaf rubbings, depending upon the time of year, the age, the theme of the day. There's always an overarching theme that pieces tie into. We'll have lunch, and then there'll be potentially something a little bit more like challenging that'll kind of bring everything together, either a team challenge, or there'll be, we'll be whittling or practicing fire building skills, or perhaps doing a blindfolded walk through an area that we haven't been to before. Something that will push the edges a little bit, all well within their capabilities and held really carefully by the teen mentors or the adult mentors. And then we also have time to synthesize everything that we have learned. So we've got our hitbodedut, that like time out in nature by oneself, speaking aloud or in silence, kind of communing with the trees, the earth, etc. And then there'll be a closing circle, a little bit of a harvest of what are we taking from today, before they are collected and head on home. And then just as a note afterwards, as part of that mentorship model, like we don't leave, we stay with the teen mentors and go over, okay, well, what is your harvest from this time? Like what has been your area of growth? What has been your area of challenge? Where did you feel like you were an expert today? And so that part of that learning is still happening with the teen mentor at the end of the day. And then we come back in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Sarah-Lise. We are going to watch our youth programs video, which gives you, also a sense of all our youth programs, but in a bit of a different format. And I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing my sound. I'm seeing some questions in the chat, maybe. If people have questions, we can take a minute to answer those while I figure this out.
While you're figuring that out, Sylvie, I'll just say that while we often have a very highly organized schedule for the day, it's always very emergent. And there have been times where we're, playing in the mud of a riverbed, and that is what we do for most of the day, because we do really value that co-created experience. I wanted to name that as well.
Yeah, thank you. And that's actually also one of our curricular principles. We call it the 50-50 model, where mentors really plan out the day and are prepared for, a whole day to run. And then we see what happens, right? Maybe you do play in the creek for an hour and there's a lot of learning connection that can happen there. So we say that 50% of the day will end up being emergent, and 50% of the day is what we've planned. And maybe now you'll see it in action.
Youth programs at Wilderness Torah are all about creating a culture of initiation.
Youth programs, Behoots, Nature, and Neshama Quest, that's how we start creating this multi-generational community that we're building at Wilderness Torah. We really dive into the cycles of the Hebrew calendar and start introducing that rhythm of seasonality and Jewish holidays and how that all connects. Starting in kindergarten, we welcome families into this nature connection world. Behoots is our K-5 Sunday School in the Woods program. Young people come to explore and play and connect and grow with each other. We explore Judaism through crafts and songs and stories. And then after Behoots, young people can transition into the Nature, which is our middle school rite-of-passage program.
We gather for day-long adventures, Wednesday evening fire circles, and camping trips in the Greater Bay Area, where we come together over the 2 years to learn skills, learn from Jewish traditions, and it culminates in an overnight solo challenge in the forest.
After B'Nature, we have Neshama Quest, which is our immersive week-long teen backpacking adventures, really focused on deepening into those connections that we strengthened in B'Nature, started in Bahoots.
And we go out into the California wilderness to learn how to thrive together in the backcountry. We have immersive challenges and joyful times around the fire, and we nurture these teenagers to become leaders. We also design in parent programs, education, picnics, counsel, and gatherings that bring families together around these values of earth-based Judaism. We are building an intergenerational, earth-connected, Jewish-connected village. It's an understanding that we as adults have something to share with the children, and that the children have something to share with us.
Great. So I hope that helped give a sense of what it looks like to be out there with Wilderness Torah youth programs. And I just wanted to say a bit about who are these mentors who are working with all these young people. They come from a lot of different places. There's Sarah Lise right there. They're often artists and educators and naturalists and people who are really passionate about bringing Judaism to young people. It's often people who either had, Jewish experiences growing up that didn't meet their needs, or people who are, working on their Jewish journeys a lot now. And part of the way that they're connecting with their Judaism is by bringing that to Bahoots B'Nature. And that's a really special connection for us. And our teen mentors are also clearly a really integral part of our program. We have teen mentors who mentor for 4 or 5 years all throughout high school, starting in middle school. And it's really special to be able to mentor them in our layers of mentoring, and also see them mentoring the younger ones as they have learned as participants. And our teen mentors have a really strong community among themselves, and those are often the folks who are on Neshama Quest as well. So we're engaging them too, and everyone's getting the mentorship and everyone's giving the mentorship. And Itamar, would you tell us a bit about COVID safety?
Yeah, you might be tired of hearing about this, but it's still relevant. And if you're watching this as a recording, this might not be relevant anymore because this changes a lot. But just to say that Bahoots has been running for over 10 years successfully, and then ever since the pandemic started, we've ran 3 seasons, I believe, safely and successfully since then, with no outbreaks of any kind, or no incidents. And the way we do that is, first of all, we're 100% outdoors. We require participants to wear masks, except when we're doing like specific activities in which everybody's more than 6 feet apart and not moving around. We ask families to fill out a health screen, and we're adhering to COVID policies, which do change, but they're pretty comprehensive, and we will share them with you once you sign up, or if you wanted to see them before signing up, we can share them with you. And over there's a lot more detail that I'm not going to go into right now.
As I noted earlier on in this presentation, we also have our youth and families programs present at our community programs. So right now our community programs are largely on hold for the next year. However, starting with the high holidays of next year, including and Sukkot, we're actually working right now to more incorporate youth and family support and B'Nature mentors B'Nature and teen mentors as like parts of our village. And so I believe there's a discount if you are part of the youth programs, Bahoots or B'Nature to attend a community program. And it's just a really great way to continue that connection and that Jewish learning outside of the Bechutz day. And it's a way for you as families, as parents, as siblings to meet other like-minded families and learn a little bit more about our Wilderness Torah philosophy and be involved.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We're going to transition to our questions section. And for that, we'll stop the recording.